Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and iOS 26 Beta 2 has been out for a couple weeks, and iOS 18.6 Beta 2 has been out for a few days. But there's even more to talk about since the iOS 26 Beta 2 is out. What's new video. We'll talk about the latest Apple news, some new features, as well as the overall experience on both versions. Not just my experience, but your experience based off the YouTube community poll on the post page. At the time of this video, there's over 12,000 votes and 168 comments. I've gone through all the comments to determine what the experiences are like on both versions, so be sure to stick around toward the end of the video where I'll read some of your comments as well. Now, Apple this week announced the update for MLB. They're bringing TV Plus MLB Friday Night Baseball back in August. So you can see the announcement here where it says Apple and Major League Baseball announce August Friday Night Baseball schedule. So that's available. I'll link it in the description below. And you can see it starts on August 1st. And of course, there's more details online and also in the TV Plus app. So if you go into Apple's TV app under TV Plus, you'll see it here where we have Cardinals at Cubs and many other things as well for Friday Night Baseball. Now we're hearing less and less from Apple about Apple Intelligence now that they're pushing off some of the major feature releases. And it seems like they're pushing ads now for iPhone 16 features. In a recent ad on Apple's UAE website or YouTube channel, you'll see here that we have iPhone 16 Pro camera control. So it's a new ad pushing the new features of iPhone 16 rather than Apple Intelligence. And that's probably because they're having some issues with it. It appears Apple may abandon their own model in favor of using Anthropic or ChatGPT on their own secure servers for Siri in the future. This would be a pretty major move and a major admission that the internal Siri model by itself isn't good enough to be on the level of Google's Gemini, ChatGPT, or others. This move is according to a new report from Bloomberg, who says Anthropic's models may work better with Apple, but either way, this may be a move Apple should make in order to become competitive with others such as Google, OpenAI, and others. So I would love to see them do something like this if it can be secure on their own servers when you're utilizing Siri. Whether it's called Siri or something else in the future, though, we don't really know. But Apple is innovating again, it seems, but in the camera space this time around, as they're working on camera sensors and getting it as close to the dynamic range of the human eye as possible. So if they can do this, it will change not only cell phone cameras, but cameras forever. Apple recently filed a patent for a stacked sensor that could have up to 20 stops of dynamic range. This would be better than pretty much any camera out there today. Your eye can see about 20 or 30 stops of range, so a camera in this range would be a major innovation. Some pretty impressive specs if that's really what they can do. Or maybe even their own camera, and that's something I would love to see from them as well. And it seems Apple may be delaying some of the features for users in the EU with iOS 26 due to regulations in the European Union. According to the Wall Street Journal this week, and Apple's Vice President of Legal, Kyle Andier, they've actually said that Apple has made the decision to delay some features such as the visited places in Apple Maps. That's something where it can keep track of where you've gone just locally on your device and then bring that back up, show you visited places if maybe you'd want to return there. It's unclear if there's any other features that would face delay in the EU as well, but I'll let you know as soon as I hear more about that. But that's a bit of a disappointment since we still don't have screen mirroring as well, so hopefully Apple can work through that and get all of the features available everywhere. Now, when it comes to new features this week, one of the new iOS 26 features in AirPods is an option to shut them off while you sleep, and if you fall asleep, it senses that and then stops playing the music. This is a great feature if you listen to your AirPods regularly while you're sleeping, whether it's a podcast, music, or something else. And you'll see under the latest settings, if you have the latest beta on here, that you can pause media when falling asleep. My friend Steve Mosier recently found that Beats will do this as well, so it won't just be limited to AirPods, but it seems the latest Beats headphones will have this feature. So that's great news if you're using Beats instead of AirPods. Now, another feature that was recently discovered by Miguel from iDevice Help is if you're using FaceTime and someone is maybe showing something inappropriate in the FaceTime call, it can pause and give you a message that says, if you feel uncomfortable, you should end the call. So that's something that's new, that was discovered by accident, and seems like it should work well if you're using FaceTime, just along with some of the other features that were built in with iOS 18 and previous versions that will censor some images if you want it to. So let me know what you think of that feature in the comments below. As I mentioned in a previous feature video about iOS 26, Apple has added captive Wi-Fi capability to allow you to sync hotel Wi-Fi passwords and other public networks seamlessly across your devices if you visited there before. Max Weinbach found that in a hotel, Wi-Fi actually prompted him. You can see this on X, where Wi-Fi was prompting him in a hotel to autofill the actual password from his iPad. So it will sync that information, sync it up, and make it much easier to join those Wi-Fi networks in public places. So it's great to see that actually working. One other thing I wanted to mention has to do with weather. If you're using the weather app that's built into iPhone and you scroll down to where you have the map, in iOS 26 Beta 2, you'll see that we have the option for 1 hour or 12 hours. While we had this before, you can tap on it here. It was more of a text menu as opposed to an actual button where you could switch. So that's something that's been updated as well. Now, if I go into messages, maybe I'm in a message, this is actually sent to another device I have. If I go in here and then I go to my emoji and then I tap on one of the emoji, it briefly tells me what that actual emoji is. So you'll see here, hands pressed together. Here's another one that says fire. We also have one that says yes, LOL. You can see another one here, beaming face with smiling eyes. And while we technically had this in iOS 18, it rarely seemed to work. And oftentimes when you pressed on an emoji, it would do nothing. So it looks like it's working properly now. Now, if we go into a website and maybe we copy some text here, this is about the sports app update that Apple updated last week with tennis. Maybe we'll copy here. If we press the button to the right here with the options, we now have the option to copy the link with a highlight. So it's just giving you more information. You can copy it with a highlight, maybe go back into messages. Let's go ahead and paste this. You'll see here, we'll paste it and it will give a highlight and a link to that as well. So that's something that's new, just an easier way to do that. Also, I recently copied a phone number that was in the phone app and saw something that I thought might be in future updates. So if I go into phone, this was an unknown call that came in today. And if I scroll down and maybe go to the phone number, press and hold, and then copy, one thing I saw is when I went to Spotlight Search, it actually showed me something I didn't expect, such as a link on a clipboard. So you'll see it shows link on clipboard, but showed me the phone number this time. So it looks like it's not working completely, but with macOS Tahoe, we actually have a clipboard where we can go in and see the previous copied options. So hopefully we'll see more of that in future versions of iOS 26. Now within the accessibility menu, there's a couple nice new options. So if we go into accessibility and go under maybe something that's new with VoiceOver, within VoiceOver here, you'll see there's a what's new in VoiceOver. This is something I like to see throughout here where it goes over new features with what's new in VoiceOver in iOS 26 with Braille access, other things that I've talked about in previous videos. And you can see that in many different places. Hover text also has it. So what's new in hover text in iOS 26. We also have it in different locations such as display and text size. We have it in other locations such as vehicle motion cues, assistive touch, and everything else that's new. So you can go throughout and see what's new. I'm not sure how long this will stay, but I would love to see this throughout the OS, talking about more individual features throughout just by simply tapping on it. Also, if we go into the share sheet in something, maybe you've seen this before, but if we maybe go in here, go ahead and share, it actually is dynamic this time around. For example, you'll see I'm trying to share maybe a news story, and it gives me AirDrop messages, mail, and notes, but also copy, add bookmark, add to reading list, and more. If maybe I go into a photo here, we'll go into this photo since this is a screenshot, go ahead and try and share it. And now it says copy photo, add to album, add to shared album, or use it as wallpaper. It's more dynamic this time around and seems like it realizes what's sort of the context of the option or whatever you're looking at, and then gives you relevant share sheets. So that's something I really appreciate. Also, something I saw pop up last week is when your Apple Watch gets low on power, it gives you a suggestion that you might want to use low power mode. And you'll see this popped up for me on June 26th, where it said, battery, you've used more battery than usual for this time of day. Extend your battery life by turning on low power mode. And then it gave me the option or the suggestion to do that. So that's a nice little update where it's just letting me know, hey, you're using more power than normal. You may want to do this to make it through the day. Now, one thing I did want to mention about WatchOS, WatchOS Beta 2 has an issue specifically on Hermes Apple Watches. Apple mentions this in their release notes for the Watch app, and you'll see there's some bugs here, or it loads fairly slow. If you update to WatchOS 26 Beta 2 on the Apple Watch Hermes, it can go into a boot loop and cause lots of issues, and you can't really fix it. If you try and unpair it with your iPhone and then repair, it doesn't work properly. So I would caution you against doing that, and hopefully you haven't done that already. Now, when it comes to the next iPhone, Apple's working on new features for that, and one of those has to do with the camera, where supposedly you'll be able to record from the front and rear camera. And on the upcoming iPhones, it seems all of them will have 48 megapixel cameras, with maybe an updated front-facing camera as well. So I've shown this before, and maybe that's what this camera bar is more about, or the camera tray, where we have more room for different things such as larger sensors with maybe the telephoto zoom lens. We don't know exactly what this will be occupying or what will be underneath, but if we have larger camera sensors for the telephoto lens, as well as maybe a 24 megapixel for the front-facing camera, it may take up more of that space. So many people have asked me, why would you have that? And maybe that's why, with additional sensors in there as well. As far as releases this week, well, Apple did release Safari technology preview updates, and you'll see that here. It's now up to version 2.2.2 that was released on July 1st and available for macOS Tahoe and macOS Sequoia. So if you want to check out the latest Safari technology, you can do that. Of course, there's release notes and more. As far as other releases, well, iOS 18.6 Beta 2 released earlier this week, and maybe in just a week or so, we could be on weekly schedules for both iOS 18.6 and iOS 26. I would expect iOS 26 Beta 3 to release this coming Monday on the 7th. That's typically what they do. And then if everything's okay with that, we could see a public beta either later that week or the following week. That's what Apple did last time with a re-release. So we had a release, and then a little while later, we got a re-release of Beta 3 for developers, and then a public beta for public beta testers. Also, iOS 18.6 Beta 3 could release the same time next week as well. We don't know if we'll go to a weekly schedule just yet, but usually after the third beta, we switch to a weekly schedule. We'll have betas throughout the summer, and then in just a couple months, we should have the public release. So iOS 26 should release to the public sometime in mid-September. That's typically what Apple does every single year. Now, as far as the overall experience, well, iOS 18.5 has been out over a month at this point, about a month and a half, and has been having some issues here and there. I've covered those in depth in other videos, and it looks like iOS 18.6 Beta 2 has resolved many of those issues. Most people this time around in the comments in the YouTube community poll had said that it's surprisingly smooth, has much better performance, is very stable and refined. However, the wallpaper bug may still be there. So you'll see there, it does desaturate a little bit, but overall it's very smooth. I didn't see any complaints of touch issues or anything like that. Even having a screen protector on here, going into things like settings, just feels very responsive. It's also running much cooler overall than it was before, so it seems like this is a big step up in fixing a lot of bugs, and maybe that's why we haven't had a major update for so long. So maybe Apple will finally get this right just before the release of iOS 26 or a couple months before. I do expect an iOS 18.7 like we have every year, and then maybe future updates, but 17.7.2 was the last major update to people running iOS 17. So iPadOS 17 has gotten some updates past that, but not iOS 17. Now, iOS 26 Beta 2 being out about 2 weeks at this point definitely still has some issues, but seems to be better than Beta 1. For example, we have the same issues we talked about last week with lag and freezing. Apple CarPlay is laggy and very choppy when using maps. In fact, the map doesn't rotate smoothly. I've seen that myself even after rebooting. Some odd issues with that. Some people this week have said that YouTube has been freezing while trying to play video. They're also having more issues with apps in general. Of course, the apps haven't been updated yet and won't until it's released to the public, but some people are saying things not just YouTube, but other apps are crashing, such as WeChat. Many banking apps aren't working properly, and there's just lag in general in the overall system after a couple days. It seems to slow down. I've had to reboot it a couple times throughout the week, and also have just had it crash or respring. It's not unusual for an early beta to have these issues, but it's definitely a problem for some. Some games lag. Copy and pasting seems to be particularly buggy for me. I'll copy some text, try and paste it, and it does nothing. So if maybe I go in and copy some text out of Safari, we'll do that. Maybe we'll just copy this here. See if we copy. Let's go ahead and copy. We'll go into Notes. And if I go into notes and try and paste, it looks like it's going to work. But all throughout the week, it's been giving me problems. I haven't been able to do that easily. I'll have to close the app and then try again. Many people are having issues with connectivity. In fact, I'm having some odd issues when connected to CarPlay, where I'll just switch to LTE for no reason. You'll see I have one bar now where I'll typically have two where I'm at currently, and I'll have one bar of LTE. It won't switch to 5G until I reset it using the airplane mode here, switch it back, and then all of a sudden I have 3 bars of 5G in the same place. Also, there's been some issues with connectivity with AirPods, just dropping or not connecting properly. So you'll see here, I'll try and connect them, and sometimes they work right away, other times they don't. So sometimes that happens and then they just drop overall. Again, there's some odd issues with voiceover, which have carried over from the previous one. So definitely some issues. And you saw that swipe up there was very laggy. So definitely some odd issues. In fact, iOS 26 Beta 2 offers performance improvements over Beta 1 and introduces some updates to Liquid Glass, but it still has some significant battery drain, various glitches, especially UI issues, and occasional performance stutters or app freezes. Meanwhile, iOS 18.6 Beta 2 is largely seen as a huge improvement over the problematic release of iOS 18.5, and it offers a much smoother and more stable experience for those on the iOS 18 sort of updates or tracks. So this is definitely an issue for many. I think Apple really needs to get an update out. And speaking of overall heat and thermals, well, this phone has been hot the entire video, and you may have seen my battery has been draining rapidly. Let's go ahead and take a look with the thermal camera, as it's quite warm right now, where 18.6 is quite cool to the touch. So you'll see iOS 26 Beta 2 on the iPhone 16 Pro Max is running at the hottest point around 35, and I saw it climb up to 37 degrees earlier. So right now it's sitting at about 35, so maybe it's cooling down a little bit. And on iOS 18.6 Beta 2, we're below that at 29.5, and it looks like the battery died in the FLIR camera. But definitely much cooler on iOS 18.6, doing the same thing, basically not doing a whole lot on the display. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. We'll unlock them. You'll see it was off, so maybe it cooled down a little bit, but quite warm. When it comes to whether or not iOS 26 is stable, at this point, it's not yet. It's completely normal. I would expect it to get much more stable by Beta 3 or the public beta, but at this point, I would recommend do not install this on your main device. So if you were wondering if you should install iOS 26 Beta 2, I would say no, especially if you're not on the iOS 26 updates yet. However, if you're on Beta 1, I definitely would install it. But if you're wondering about iOS 18.6 Beta 2, well, public Beta 2 seems to be quite stable. So you could try it out. It seems better, but just keep in mind it still is a beta and could have issues, and be sure to report that in the feedback app if you are having problems. There's lots of issues listed under the release notes as well, so make sure they're not listed there, at least for 26 Beta 2, as if there's already listed issues, then you won't need to report them. Otherwise, there's quite a few issues people are experiencing. When it comes to performance, well, I mentioned that before on iOS 11, or iPhone 11 rather, with 26 Beta 2. Overall, just using it seems to be okay, but then occasionally you'll see some lag like we saw before. You'll go in, swipe home, and it will be incredibly slow. But sometimes going into the camera, it will lag. I was trying to use it for a video, and it just seemed to lag for me from time to time and completely freeze up on the 26.2 beta on the 16 Pro Max. So definitely I would recommend holding off if you need to use the camera, for example. When it comes to battery life, first let's take a look at iOS 26 Beta 2, as it looks like it's quite good. And thanks to Connor for sending this in on an iPhone 16 Pro Max running iOS 18.6 Beta 2. He has 9 hours and 28 minutes of screen active time, 1 hour and 9 minutes of screen idle time, and used about 75 to 80% of the battery. Overall, very, very good. I'm seeing that from multiple people as well. However, with iOS 26 Beta 2, I'm having pretty terrible battery life. I'm currently down to 25% at the time of this video, and if we go to battery, we'll take a look at battery health. I'm at 99%. It finally dropped at 250 cycles. So that's what I've been seeing from many others. At 250 cycles, it drops to about 99, completely normal at this time, and did much better than it did with the last generation iPhone with 15 Pro Max. If we take a look at overall battery use, we'll go here to battery usage. You'll see, well, today, 4 hours and 13 minutes of screen active time, and I used 100% of the battery, as I put it on the charger a couple times you've seen. So the day before, 87%, and I went 2 hours and 29 minutes. I'm barely getting through the day without charging it twice, so definitely not very good. And of course, if you're concerned about battery health, don't put this beta on there, as it will definitely cycle the battery more, as you'll need to charge it more. In fact, in this week's poll on the YouTube community poll, 70 to 80% of you on iOS 26 Beta 2 report very poor battery life. Last week it was about 50%, so battery is still the #1 complaint about Beta 2. Now, as far as the overall experience and what you had to say, let's take a look at some of your comments. Mark Munson, D8F, said, 18.6 is very smooth, much better than 18.5 on my 15 Pro Max. Quad Rider Honda said, using iOS 18.6 Beta 2 on my 16 Pro Max. So far, it seems a lot better than the public release or 18.5. It's much more smoother performance, seems better, and battery is holding up pretty good as of right now. But it will take a few more days as it's still settling in, haven't had any issues so far. Seems like it's ready for an RC. UFC fan 777 said, wanted to update to iOS 26 Beta 2, but I'll hold off until at least the public beta version. For now, I use iOS 18.6 Beta 2, and it's been very stable for me so far. I'm very impressed using it on an iPhone 14 Pro Max. IsaacMan1870 said, iOS 26 Beta 2 on iPhone 13 Pro Max. Still treating me well, way less resprings than on Beta 1. Battery life is worse, as expected with an early beta of a major OS upgrade, and some pixel glitches. Vance Warren 83 said, iOS 26 Developer Beta 2 iPhone 16 Pro. Originally had issues with CarPlay not working at all with a wired connection. A wireless dongle worked. However, since Beta 2 it's working with a wired connection. Battery life is expected for a beta, some stuttering and such, but overall really happy with it. ZAGLUL51 said, I am using iPhone 14. After installing iOS 26 Beta 2, I faced some bugs and glitches like blank or black-white rounded compose menu bars on top of the keyboard, mostly on Notes app. Moreover, sometimes display/phone hangs. Using some apps makes the phone hot. Now, iOS 26 Beta 3 is coming soon and is usually the point where betas start to get significantly improved. This is why Apple typically releases a public beta after Beta 3, and sometimes we get a re-release with a few updates like I mentioned before. So in the next few weeks, we should start to see iOS 26 really take shape and get really good. So I'm looking forward to that. So that's everything with iOS 26 Beta 2 and iOS 18.6 Beta 2. Hopefully we get another update soon for iOS 18.5, but let me know what you're using and what you think about iOS 26 compared to iOS 18. Of course, I'll link this wallpaper in the description like I normally do, and if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe, and if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.